Venting and pouring. We're going to show how to properly vent a two-piece silicone mold for a resin casting, and we're going to make an Easy Flow 60 resin cast of some prop scissors. Now this is a 7315 platinum silicone mold we made in a previous video, and we're now going to vent this because when we made the mold we made these scissors so they were completely closed into the silicone mold. So the first step will be to put an air vent into the top of the handle of the scissors. Now this air vent will allow the air to escape as we pour the resin into the handle. Now this second vent we're going to cut will be for the resin to be poured into the scissors handle. So this one's going to be a little bit larger, and we're going to carefully cut this out in kind of a funnel shape so it'll be wider at the top and then taper off into about a less than a 1/4 inch hole in emptying into the scissors handle here. Now once we've cut this out, we're basically creating a V-shaped notch that has kind of a funnel cross section to it. Once we cut that out on this side, we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side of the mold very carefully. And we're not going to show that side because it's pretty much a repeat of what I'm doing here. But we want to do that very carefully, remove that excess silicone, and now we're ready to cast up a set of prop scissors. Now the first thing we're going to do is pre-paint the mold with some silver spray paint. We want to lightly dust the mold with some silver spray paint. Just any metallic spray paint works for this. Just very lightly dust the mold with several coats of silver spray paint and allow that to dry. It's important that you allow the paint to dry. If you don't, you could wind up with imperfections on the surface of your cast where the solvent from the paint is causing problems with the resin chemistry. Now there's our mold. Now you'll notice here on the other side where we cut that out into the funnel shape, and we're ready to pour that full of Easy Flow 60 resin. Now we're using Easy Flow 60 because this part has some really thin sections, and Easy Flow 60 pours at about 60 centipoise. So it's low viscosity enough to flow into those super thin sections without having to use a pressure chamber or any kind of special equipment. Now once we've mixed up our Easy Flow resin, and keep in mind Easy Flow 60 mixes 1:1 by volume. If you're measuring it by weight, you'll need to go 100 parts A to 90 parts B. But here we're measuring by volume. We want to crimp the cup a little bit to create a little pour spout and fill up our mold with resin. And we want to watch our vent to see when the vent fills up with resin. When the vent fills up, we'll know we've got the mold full. And we don't want to try to pour into the vent because we want to let the vent be just a place for air to come out. And you always want to vent on a mold like this because when you're pouring a really thin part, it's easy for your air to stop the resin from even flowing into the mold. So the air has to have a way out in order for the resin to be able to fill up the mold completely. Now this is a soft enough silicone we can squeeze on the mold a little bit to burp any other air bubbles out. And we top it off and allow the resin to set. Now Easy Flow 60 gels in about 2.5 minutes, and on a part like this with thin sections, our demold time is going to be about 20 minutes at 70 degrees. And as always, remember that you can find all of these supplies at BITY Mold Supply, and there's our web address for those of you who want to know where to find this good quality resin. And there is our finished cast of our scissors. And you notice we have a little bit of flash, but overall we have a really tight seam, and it's just going to take a little bit of cleanup with a scalpel or X-Acto knife to clean this up and match that to our real scissors. And there you have it, an Easy Flow 60 cast in a two-piece silicone mold. Now, as a side note here, when you pull your first casting out, this was our very first casting to do in this mold. Sometimes you may find that you may need an additional vent to help the resin flow. In this case, that worked out perfectly, but if you need to, you can always go back and cut additional vents into the mold. This is why it's always good to cut the vents after the mold is made and not make the vents into the mold, because you may need to add more vents. And you can always add vents, you can't subtract them once they're already there.